So day 8 of Browns training camp has concluded, and most of you have heard the very unfortunate news about Grant Delpit, which is he has torn his Achilles. It has been confirmed by an MRI. Grant Delpit will not play in this season. He might not play for most of next season. He's going to be out a very long time. He has completely torn his Achilles. It was a non-contact injury, happened during a individual drill. Really sad to see this happen to a player at this point of his career. The Browns also had practice, so what are my thoughts on Grant Delpit and how the Browns are going to recover from that injury? And also, what did the Browns look like in day 8 of camp? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick, don't forget to hit the subscribe button here if you're new, and also ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. Going to be a ton of training camp content coming out in the coming days. I have a playlist for all my NFL training camp content, so if you're behind, catch yourself up with that right there. Also, if you want to play fantasy football with me for the 2020 season, please sign up for the Patreon. And then once you signed up for the Patreon, message me on Patreon letting me know that you want to be in the fantasy football league. I'll put your name down. Again, act fast. The spots go fast usually. So let's talk about the Grant Delpit injury because it's devastating for the Browns. It's also devastating for a young player in Grant Delpit who didn't even get to play a single game in the NFL yet. And now he has an Achilles tear, which is going to be one heck of a mountain to climb up to just get back on the field, let alone get back on the field and be who he was at LSU. I mean, he was coming off an ankle injury. I don't know if the Achilles was on that same foot and that if something developed while he decided to play during that season and made it worse, because it just seems rare that a Achilles kind of pull happens non-contact out of nowhere. But it's just unfortunate for Grant Delpit personally, because this is just a hell of a thing to come back from after your rookie year. So to Grant, who's going to be on a long road to recovery, I wish you the best. I hope the best for you, and I hope that you can be back on the field sometime soon. But for the Browns, what does this mean? What are their options? A lot of people have thrown out Earl Thomas. Doesn't make a ton of sense. Earl Thomas's biggest problem in Baltimore was that he didn't fit the scheme there in Baltimore as much as he'd like. He didn't like what he was asked to do. I promise you he wouldn't like what the free safety's job is to do in this Cleveland Browns scheme. So I don't think that's going to happen, both from a fit standpoint on the field and off the field. Also, I do think somebody like Eric Reed is going to make a ton of sense. He's a free/strong safety kind of hybrid. He's played both positions. I'd expect him to kind of be who the Browns go after if they go after anybody, and I think they will. They have a good amount of depth in that defensive back room. That is true. So I think once they get everybody back healthy, they'll be able to shuffle around some pieces and kind of make up for not having Grant Delpit. And I think just one signing, maybe an Eric Reed, could kind of help put it over the top as kind of a solid unit. Again, I don't think the secondary is going to be the issue when it comes to this defense. Also, when it comes to injury news today, there was no Terrence Mitchell. There was no listed reason. And then Greedy Williams left early. Also no David Njoku, but all those don't seem like they're going to be major injuries. Kevin Johnson could be back earlier than expected. He could see some playing time early in the season, which is great to hear because lacerated liver, that sounded terrible when it first came out. The Browns have had just terrible luck with injuries this year. A lot of these injuries are very fluke, kind of random injuries. I can't even honestly credit them to the weird offseason that we've had. So it's just been a string of bad luck when it comes to this defense and being able to stay healthy. Let's hope that the injury problem stops here. But again, nothing's guaranteed in that standpoint. But speaking of the defense, let's talk about how they performed in day 8 of camp today. Now, the defense was shorthanded when it comes to the secondary. They weren't shorthanded when it comes to the defensive line and the front seven. I mean, obviously, Mac Wilson's not there, but I think that's just going to become a reality for this team. He's not going to be here for a little while, so they're just going to have to get used to that. So they've had what they're probably going to go out there on day 1 with healthy, and this defensive line did not have a good day. The defense did not have a good day today. It's the first time I said that throughout camp. But this defensive line got bullied by the Browns offensive line all day. You had a guy like Farrell Brown, a tight end, go one-on-one with Myles Garrett and hold his own. Nick Chubb just not getting touched all day, just wide open holes. The Browns offensive line dominated. Now, this is a good sign for the offense, and I'll talk about the offense later, but for the defensive line, it kind of raises those concerns that I had. It kind of reminds me of how they ended the season without Myles Garrett. It kind of makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and get a little bit concerned about if this defensive line is going to be able to make it for the entire season, because this offensive line completely dominated them, got whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, all times, at all times. Now, again, this comes with the asterisk. It's hard to kind of pinpoint how offensive line play and defensive line play are going to look with just camp practices and no preseason games. But I will say this is really good for the offensive line. This is the first day they've really dominated and looked like the offensive line that they're paid to be. But also the defensive line getting dominated in the way that they did is pretty concerning when you see how poorly they performed on just run blocking. Like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb really didn't have to do much other than run to the wide open spot today. So bad day for the defensive line, the front seven, the linebackers, everybody involved in that. Good day for the secondary, right? The secondary, I think, had a decent enough day, given that like Andy Sadejo, who's kind of a starter, and Denzel Ward were the only starters that you had on the field at the end of practice. They did a pretty decent job, right? They had no right not to get shredded today, and they did get kind of shredded, but it wasn't embarrassing. They held their own at some moments. They had some guys step up. So the secondary is deep, but with how many guys are out right now in that secondary, it's really exposing that the way this defense is structured is that the secondary and the strength of that secondary is going to make up for a lot of the weaknesses in the linebacking room. And that was something that was known. The problem is with Grant Delpit out, he's a big piece of being able to make up for what the linebackers do because he's big and versatile. So how the Browns go about replacing him is going to be a big deal. It's going to be something that is going to impact how this team plays. It's going to impact what's going to happen with the linebacking room and with the secondary. So while I'm not going to hit the panic mode button in week 2 of training camp, I am going to say that's a concern, and I am interested to see can any of their new additions that they brought into this team make an impact and kind of pick up slack in that area. I know Malcolm Smith is pretty good in pass coverage, so maybe he factors in there. But, we'll see about that. Now let's talk about the offense. The offense, I feel like, didn't have like its best day when it comes to playmaking, but I think they had their best day when it comes to looking crisp, looking more complete. Like, I think they're making that next step in this mode that I talked about last week. So good things that you've seen here. Again, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, look explosive, look fast, look great. That's what you need to see out of them. I expect them to carry this team early on in the season. Baker Mayfield, though, had a good day, especially when you look at what the Browns are going to ask him to do this season and what Baker Mayfield has proven to be good at in his young career, which is being on rhythm and making good throws. And that's what he did a lot of. He was on rhythm, made this throw to Odell. He was on rhythm, executed this play action boot perfectly, and then boom, it's right there wide open for him. The Browns also did a kind of move the ball 2-minute drill 7-on-7, and Baker moved the ball pretty consistently and pretty well there. I think he didn't have a lot of problems getting plays in. It looked like things were just happening a lot faster. It looked like, last week they were having a lot of issues with getting the play in and getting everybody lined up before the play clock expired. This week, it seems like they've worked on that and they're starting to get on their feet when it comes to that thing. So that's all good signs from the offense and the structure of it. I do have some interesting notes about some individual pieces. There seems to be a specific role being carved out here for kind of that Devo Samuel role where there's going to be a wide receiver who's going to take like these end arounds and these interesting kind of yak plays, but they're not really yak plays because they're technically rushes. That competition seems to be between JoJo Natson, T1 Taylor, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think they're all competing for this specific role. Now, I think during the season, you're going to see a lot of these touches go to a Jarvis, go to a Odell, more so a Jarvis because he's more adept to do so. But I do think when they want a speed guy in there, I think JoJo Natson might be the guy because he's clearly the fastest guy. He's clearly the guy who can get around the edge the best. And he's had a decent camp so far. So I would expect JoJo Natson, who might make the team as the kick returner, to be there. An interesting individual note, and while I gushed about Baker Mayfield earlier, I have noticed that somebody who's had a bit of a rough camp. Every time he's open, he just doesn't seem to get the ball, and I'm starting to wonder if this isn't just communication and if this is Rashard Higgins running the wrong route sometimes, or him kind of going rogue and doing his own thing, because it just happens way too often. Like, every other quarterback will make plays to Donovan Peoples-Jones and Kadero Hodge, but somehow Rashard Higgins gets open and doesn't get the ball where he should get the ball because that's where he's designed to be open. Like, it's always kind of something's off with getting the ball to Rashard Higgins. And like, even with Baker Mayfield, somebody who had a connection with Rashard Higgins in 2018, that connection just doesn't seem to be there because these two just seem to consistently miss each other, couldn't find each other, couldn't get on the same page. Either too high, either too far. Like, sometimes it's Baker's fault. Sometimes it looks like it's Rashard's fault. It's just inconsistent, and it doesn't look like there's much chemistry there, which is shocking when you look at some of the tape that these two had in 2018. So I'm wondering what's going on there. Something happened in 2019 between these two because they're just not on the same page. And then let's talk about the tight end room, because I think the tight end room continues to show how deep they are and how good they are. Harrison Bryant made this absolutely beautiful catch on this absolutely beautiful throw in the red zone period to score a touchdown. And, you know, I'm just starting to think that David Njoku's job is definitely in question, because this is a red zone play. Like, this is David Njoku is supposed to be the guy making these plays and supposed to make these highlight reels. But I feel like I put David Njoku on the offensive side of these highlights rarely. Like, I feel like I've highlighted every other tight end on this roster but David Njoku. And that's not because I don't like David Njoku. I wish I could put him on here, but he just isn't making plays. Whenever he's in position, he either drops it or let the DB make the play on him. It's just never there. But the other tight ends, Austin Hooper, Harrison Bryant, even Farrell Brown made some plays today. And Farrell Brown is a blocking tight end. Like, that's the guy who went one-on-one with Myles Garrett and held his own. That's what Farrell Brown does best. That's what he's on the team to do. And the fact that he's made more plays in the pass game than David Njoku, who's supposed to specifically do that, that's got to be concerning for David Njoku. And again, he's out with a wrist injury again. He gets outperformed by every other tight end on this roster, and he's the one guy on the team that's requested a trade. I don't know what his future is with this team, what the role is with this team, because if you're talking about the best option to have at tight end too, it's looked like Harrison Bryant throughout all of camp. It's rarely ever looked like David Njoku should be that guy. And if you look at the guy you want in that third spot, that primarily blocking tight end spot, it's either going to be Steven Carlson or Farrell Brown. And right now, it's looking like Farrell Brown because he can block better. This is a concern for David Njoku. I don't know where he fits. I don't know if there's a package. Maybe there's a package for him. But it just doesn't seem like it's a fit. And it doesn't seem like this is going to be the type of offense that's going to split a tight end out wide all the time. I just don't see what the plan is for David Njoku. And I don't know if David Njoku is performing up to the expectations that the coaching staff had of him to give him that plan during the regular season. But we'll wait and see. But that's a concern, right? David Njoku has to make more of an impact if he's going to justify being the number 2 tight end, if he's going to justify making all of these trade requests. He's got to perform better. He's got to be on the field more. And the fact that he's not on the field most of the time, when he's on the field, he doesn't make any plays. And even when he's on the field, he's dropped the ball a healthy amount of times. And it doesn't help that nobody behind him is playing bad. Like, Harrison Bryant outplays him every time they're both on the field, let alone the fact that Harrison Bryant hasn't missed a practice. So that, if you're David Njoku, is a massive concern. That's my biggest positive takeaway, I would say, out of this day of camp, is that the offense is getting things together. It looks like they're fixing the timing. It looks like things are getting on time for this to be ready for Baltimore. And it looks like the Browns have found their tight end too, which was supposed to be David Njoku, but looks like it's going to be Harrison Bryant, because this dude looks ready. Like, he made that play against the ones. He's making plays against the ones, and now he's out there with the ones making plays, looking good. So I just don't see where David Njoku fits. But let me know in the comment section where you think David Njoku fits. Do you think he's going to be on this team? Do you think he's going to get cut? What's the future for David Njoku in brown and orange? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day and have a good night.